Just saying, you got to have one for your address.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. December 18, 2019 meeting of the Seattle City Council's Planning, Land Use, and Zoning Committee will come to order. Good morning, everybody. It's 9:32 a.m. I'm Alex Peterson, the current chair of the Planning, Land Use, and Zoning Committee, and joining me at the table is Councilmember-elect Daniel Strauss. So if there's no objection, the agenda will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the agenda is adopted. So I'll give some brief introductory remarks here. We'll talk about our panelists who are going to join us. We'll have lots of public comment, which we're looking forward to. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. So as many of the people in the audience know, trees are part of the soul of Seattle, and we are the Emerald City. And trees provide numerous environmental benefits. They impact the quality of life in all our communities. In fact, the presence of trees in specific neighborhoods is an important aspect of social and environmental justice. And the lack or loss of trees is harmful to the fabric of our city. In addition, conservation of trees is an explicit strategy to address climate change impacts in Seattle's Green New Deal Resolution 31895 that City Council adopted in August. That Green New Deal resolution states that the city commits to investing in climate preparedness, and these strategies may include encouraging preservation and planting of trees citywide to increase the city's tree canopy cover, prioritizing historically low canopy and low-income neighborhoods. So today we're going to hear from City of Seattle officials responsible for implementing the Resolution 31902. That resolution, adopted by the City Council just 2 months ago, establishes a schedule for adoption of a new tree ordinance next year. And I want to thank Councilmember Sally Bagshaw and Councilmember-elect Daniel Strauss here for their support of tree conservation, moving that resolution forward. I also want to thank Councilmember Lorena Gonzalez for ensuring social justice goals were included in that resolution. Now, Resolution 31902, the tree resolution, does not require a report to City Council until the end of January, but the executive branch has graciously agreed to update us today at this last PLUS committee of 2019. It's a little more than halfway toward that reporting period in January, that deadline. So we have several esteemed experts who will contribute to the conversation today by summarizing the benefits of trees and the complexity of policy measures needed to conserve and increase tree canopy. But first, public comment. We'll take, which is standard per our rules, we'll take 20 minutes of public comment. I was asked to limit people's comment to 1 minute, but I'm not going to do that. You're going to have 2 minutes. And we have a presenter who needs to leave by 11 or so. And we have lots of people signed up. So what we're going to do, unless I hear any objections, I will use my discretion as chair under the City Council rules to extend the comment period for as long as we need to after the completion of the item 1, the presentation. So 20 minutes to get us started with public comments, then we're going to hear the presenters, then we're going to continue with public comments. You can also write alex.peterson@seattle.gov. That's alex.ped, like district, ERSEN @seattle.gov, and we'll make sure we forward your comments to Councilmember-elect Dan Strauss and to the Office of Sustainability and Environment and Department of Construction and Inspection. So at this time, we'll begin public comment. I'll call 3 names at a time. When your name's called, please line up to the microphones, and I'll ask each speaker to start by stating their name. And we're going to hold you to the 2 minutes. We appreciate that. All right, so John Lombard, Patricia Murphy, and Mike Ruby. Go ahead.
Morning, Councilmember. Not yet. Okay. Morning, Councilmember Peterson, Councilmember-elect Strauss. I'm John Lombard, and I ran for City Council from District 5 this year. I also work in environmental policy and wrote the book, Saving Puget Sound. I expect that you've had the same experience I had campaigning this year, which was to see that climate change was by far the biggest environmental issue for Seattle voters. Others today are going to speak to you about the merits of the proposed tree protection ordinance. I want to stress that this has to be a part of Seattle's climate strategy, and we need to be more ambitious about it. Seattle's goal for tree canopy coverage is 30% by 2037. But this is essentially just holding steady from when the goal was set in 2007. The city's own analysis concludes we likely lost 2% canopy cover between 2010 and 2015, and that we're at about 28% now. Portland's goal, in contrast, is 1/3 coverage with at least 25% coverage in every residential neighborhood. Their coverage has been steadily rising since 2000, and it's already at more than 30% now. It's been rising fastest in residential and commercial areas, where an enforced tree protection ordinance makes the biggest difference. Planting trees is a good thing. I've done a lot of it as a forest steward in Beaver Pond Natural Area. But keeping mature trees and letting them continue to grow is absolutely necessary, and even more important, to capture carbon, clean our air, moderate our stormwater, and to cool the urban heat island. We can do it, but we have to be serious about it. This ordinance is the most critical step. I look forward to seeing the council pass a strong version of it in early 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lombard. Patricia Murphy, Mike Ruby, Suzanne Grant.
Good morning. My name is Patricia Murphy. I live in the Licton Springs neighborhood. I'm not an expert, but I'm just a concerned citizen, took off from work to come.
Thank you.
I've lived in Seattle my whole life, and I'm seeing huge, beautiful trees cut down in my neighborhood for development. It's really disturbing, and we really need a protection for large trees now, today. There's trees that I see that are on properties that are being developed, and they're going to be cut down. And developers don't care, and they're not fined enough. They'll do it, and they'll pay the fine because they have money to be made. I'm just here to ask that we take action immediately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over here. Over this way. Good morning. I want to relate some experiences. A few months ago, I was out for my Saturday morning walk and came upon a tree crew ready to go to work on a gorgeous evergreen that we had previously determined to be an exceptional tree. I talked to a gentleman there and said, "What's going on? You can't just take an exceptional tree down during a development project without talking to DCI." And he said, "Oh, I had my arborist call DCI and explain to them that this is a hazardous tree." And they said, "Fine, go ahead." I went back a little later after having gone home to get my camera and saw it coming down. It was fine grain timber. This was no diseased tree. This was no dangerous tree. Later in the afternoon, they brought in a D5 cat to pull out the trunk and the stump. It took them over 30 minutes of huffing and puffing for that D5 cat to pull that stump out of the ground. Just a couple of months ago, I was out for a walk to the south of my house and came upon another development project, and I saw a stump about 5 foot high sticking out of the ground where somebody had already done some lumbering. I measured it. The circumference calculated into 33 inches. I sent an email to a colleague and said, "Gee, what's going on here?" He came back with an email that said, "I checked the DCI records. It was filed as 25 inches, and they said, go ahead." I'd like to be sure that you put into this ordinance something that protects us from liars and scofflaws. Thank you.
Thank you. June Blue Spruce and Annie Tho. Go ahead and line up. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I'm Suzanne Grant, and thank you for working on passing another tree ordinance that actually is supporting the existing tree code that we've had for years in this city. The loopholes that have allowed developers and SDCI to ignore the protections for exceptional trees must be closed. We brought our case to save this exceptional tree to the hearing examiner last July, but we failed in our efforts. We are not even allowed to cite 2511, the illegal tree code, during the hearing. Mitigations, including alternative designs, were not allowed to be discussed. The laws protecting exceptional trees are mowed down if the greedy developers conspire with SDCI and say they cannot achieve their, quote, development potential. Hearing examiner Vansel told me personally that we will never save exceptional trees unless the laws are changed. This is your responsibility to do so, to write and enforce these laws to save our last 6,000. Don't clear-cut Seattle. It's too late for this tree, this fabulous tree. The kill date is now January 2nd. This 100-year-old, 90-foot high, 50-foot wide, exceptional tulip tree will never be allowed to bloom like this again. Pass and enforce a tree ordinance that will save trees like this one in the future. Thank you.
June Blue Spruce, Annie Tho, Elizabeth Darrow.
My name is June Blue Spruce. I'm a member of the Neighborhood Tree Keepers Alliance and the Last 6,000. I live in Columbia City, Southeast Seattle, an area that, as you know, has a lower percentage of tree canopy than any other area of Seattle. I strongly support passage of the tree protection ordinance that has been drafted by the Urban Forestry Commission. It's an urgent priority for our community and the city. We're losing significant and exceptional trees, as we've just heard, in huge numbers every day. So I want to show you some pictures. A couple blocks from my house, there was a double lot. It was subdivided. Half of it was sold to a developer. This is what the trees looked like on that lot until July. Here's a closer look. All of them over 6 inches in diameter at breast height, some of them over 18 inches in diameter. The developer could have preserved them. They're all along the property line, along the fence line, could have built a perfectly spacious house and made their money without cutting down all of the trees. This is the scraped lot. This is a picture of the stump of the largest tree. I didn't measure it, but you can see by the can next to it that it's probably about 20 inches in diameter at the base, which is probably 16 to 18. Beautiful conifer, would have grown to be an exceptional tree if it had been allowed to. The neighbors were appalled, but there was nothing they could do about it. If the tree protection ordinance had been passed, it would have been illegal to do this. So it's up to you. You need to do your job and pass this ordinance now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Annie Tho, and I'm the chair of the Neighborhood Tree Keepers. And I'm here today to thank the trees and thank all you people for showing up for trees. I started my advocacy work for trees after a huge clear cut, which I'll show in this photo here. 25 trees in my neighborhood were clear cut. Many of them could have been saved. They were also on the perimeter of the property. Many of these were exceptional trees. And I really didn't know that much about ordinances and policies, but let me tell you, I'm learning a ton since then. What I've learned is that for 10 years, we've really done nothing to strengthen our tree ordinance. 10 years, nothing. And that's why we've lost thousands of trees that could have been saved with better policies, and we could have shaped how we do development to include trees. As was just pointed out, so many developers could change their design to have trees. Since that one clear cut, there was another clear cut just 2 blocks away, just a few months later in my same neighborhood. Now, there's the same developer has purchased a property with 49 trees, and the neighbors had tried to save these trees. 10 of them had gotten the money together, made the offer. A developer swooped in and offered cash and got the sale for the same price. This is the developer that clear-cut all these trees. He has gotten this and is going to put 6 mini mansions. It's not even affordable housing, okay? So the clear-cut foreman told me, he said, I hate this too. Take as many pictures as you want. The only way to save our trees is through a stronger tree ordinance. I propose a moratorium on exceptional trees right now.
Colleen McAleer, Judith Bendich.
Hello, my name's Elizabeth Darrow, and I bring you news from Greenwood. The Greenwood, a land to the north with towering fir trees, eagles, ravens, and running streams filled with salmon in days of yore. But the Greenwood I know, like all of Old Seattle, once a neighborhood with many trees that led and inspired Seattle to claim the title of the Emerald City. Those days are long gone now. Now we are talking about the imaginary place in the land of Oz that would be more to the point today in describing the city of Seattle and the irony of its official nickname, and the city's functional, effective commitment to recognizing the values of trees and green space and preserving it as a critical resource in sustainability, but also social justice in these dire days of climate change. For example, why is it that poor neighborhoods are bereft of trees while wealthy enclaves use their wealth and influence to preserve their quality of life? Some of us, however, fought back against a situation that threatened our exceptional tree. I'll show you. This is one of the rare success stories of the Greenwood Exceptional Tree Group in our neighborhood. We fought for 2 years. We organized and fought for 2 years, taking our inspiration from the great activist Susan B. Anthony, who said, organize, advocate, educate, and agitate. It took many people, countless hours in our neighborhood where we schooled ourselves on all the tree ordinance rules and their violations, hired lawyers, we got media attention, and it cost us over $30,000 to save our one tree. This was raising money amongst all our neighbors. We had yard sales, we had street parties, and we had a website. So if there was an effective tree ordinance, our political activism perhaps could have been used in more productive ways. We're very proud of saving this one tree. But along with the other comments today, trees are not a luxury, but a necessity. The City Council must pass but enforce a model tree protection ordinance and make it effective throughout the flawed code, but also that favors unrestrained development, maximum build-out from lot line to lot line.
Thank you, Ms. Darrow. I'll have to wrap
you.
it up. Thank you very much. Colleen McAleer, Judy Bendich, and Steve Rubstolo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, council members, and it's great to have fresh ears and new excitement and new energy behind this tree ordinance, which is long overdue in the city. So today I do represent the Laurelhurst Community Club, and we've been long supporters of a strong tree ordinance. A couple things, I won't rehash what's already the good things that are in there from the Urban Forestry Commission, but there's a few other things that I really want to bring home. One, we've heard so many examples today about what do you do if this is happening. 2 days ago, a chipper came up. People had moved in 3 weeks ago, and I thought, oh, I have to go out there again and save that tree. But there's nowhere to go with it. So a hotline, a mechanism, 24 hours, posted widely through the city could help save some of these trees, especially exceptional trees. The second thing is we do need to establish an electronic website so that as a layperson, I could go onto the site, I could find out if this person with a chipper was pruning or if they were going to take down the tree. So that's something that should be available throughout the city as a public service and a public access resource. Third, we would request that the city council do not pass the SEPA waivers for urban centers and urban villages because they're going to be densely populated and they're also going to be clear-cut if we're not really careful about it, which goes to the next thing is fee in lieu for trees that are taken down. Well, sure, it's pretty cheap for a developer to give you a percent or a tree down. That's easy. But what about the trees that take 20 or 30 years to grow? What about an 85-foot coastal redwood that sits on the shoreline, and that's the home of the eagles? Well, they need to be near the shoreline. They can't be up somewhere else in the city because they fish in the lake. So trees are not like housing units. They cannot be moved around the city. And so every effort needs to be keeping the trees where they are, put a moratorium on exceptional trees, and retain our quality of life environment.
Thank you.
I'm Judith Bendich, and welcome to the council. I'm just thrilled to have both of you here. And I want to pick up on some campaign talk that Alex Peterson gave. And he used words like accountability, data, and metrics. We have seen SDCI have none of those, none, when it comes to trees. We do not know how many have been cut. We do not know what kind of trees have been cut. We do not know any proposals that are coming up to cut the trees. So what we have is an enormous deficit in data and data compilation and data recording that is available to the public, just to pick up on what the last speaker said. Now, I have put my comments in letters already to the council members that says that. But I just want to state, after hearing so much about SDCI, I don't think they should ever be in charge of deciding whether a tree is cut. We need a separate entity that respects trees. And we need trees. We're under a consent decree on our sewer system right now. We have water pouring into Lake Washington that's polluted. Trees are one of the last resources to help stop that. And yet we're cutting them willy-nilly. So I would like to see a different entity or a separate entity set up that must review every single development and find out what trees are on that lot and make recommendations on whether or not the design specifications, if it's going to be developed, can be changed to accommodate those exceptional trees or very large trees that are on the lot. I've set all this out in my letter to the council, but I was kind of wishy-washy in that letter about whether SDCI should have any responsibility, and I've come to conclude, based on everything that I've read and everything I've heard, that it is incapable and incompetent to do that. So let's put in a system that will work, and we need to do that right away. Thank you.
After Steve speaks, we're going to talk about having the second public comment period extended till after the presenters, because we do have a presenter who does need to leave, so we're going to have presenters after Steve. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, we're at it again. Hopefully this time this will be for impact. What you need to do is to take a look at who's not here. It's very important on the console. We also need to take a look at doing something immediately, because quite frankly, we've allowed 10 years of you don't really give a darn. So it's about time to freeze things, because if you ever seen a need for a moratorium, it is really right here, right now. And these are not replaceable, simply not replaceable. Now, first thing would be to save the trees that are large, that are heritage. These are ones that are good carbon eaters, you know. You folks all claim to be environmentalists on the city council. However, you seem to like concrete and steel canyons and chainsaws. You know, President Trump also claims to be a great environmentalist. I'm asking you to actually do something, you know, not claim to be great. Now, the costs of replacing these trees, if you go to a nursery and have a crew to put one in, let's look at the real costs. If you're going to allow a developer to take down a major tree, they ought to pay at least what it really would cost to replace. And a matter of fact, there ought to be true replacement, not with a shrub, not with a sprout, not with 10 little trees, because 10 little trees don't eat up a whole lot of carbon. One big tree does a heck of a job. Also, it helps with noise, it helps with a lot of things. A lot of studies being done right now to show that the healthiest neighborhoods have a lot of trees. And it's not just one thing. It's time to actually do something, not just talk.
Mentioned earlier, and as allowed by our City Council rules, I would like to hold the remainder of the public comment period until the conclusion of item 1 on the agenda, which is our presenters. Then we can extend the public comment period where we left off on the sign-up sheet. So hearing no objection, the public comment period is held until the conclusion of item 1. I'd ask our presenters to come up and join us at the table. Hi, Yolanda.
Good morning.
Moving on to our items of business, this briefing and discussion that we're having, I'll ask our committee clerk to read item 1 into the record, and then we'll introduce the presenters. Go ahead.
So the item of business today is Office of Sustainability and Environment, Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, and outside experts briefing on need for and status of activity to implement Resolution 31902 concerning development of an updated Seattle Tree Ordinance for briefing and discussion.
So thanks everybody for being here today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate also the folks from the executive branch coming down early to give us this briefing. That was very generous of you. Really appreciate you're accommodating us on that because you didn't technically need to do this until January. So thank you very much. And we each have about 10 minutes approximately for all of you to speak. Again, a special thank you for Councilmember-elect Daniel Strauss, who cares deeply about urban forestry issues and the environmental health benefits of trees, as he worked on this resolution that we're talking about. So Councilmember-elect Strauss, if you want to make any introductory remarks now or later, it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Peterson. I've been very excited to get to work on the tree ordinance and work with many people around the table as my role as staff with Councilmember Bagshaw. So I want to thank Councilmember Bagshaw, Councilmember Herbold, and any other council members over the last decade who have worked on this ordinance. I want to thank the Urban Forestry Commission, Deputy Mayor Mosley, and all of our folks at SDCI, Shonda and Mike Podowski. Thank you for your work on this. I also want to thank our city arborists. I have been in community with a number of the people sitting in this room today with tape measures, measuring tree diameter, breast height, and roots. Through my own experience, I have watched developers choose to both preserve trees and to require that trees be cut before buildings are built. And so I have seen in my own neighborhood the difference that a developer can make in our community. And so we know that trees add value to new construction. The amount of value that somebody moving into a new building will have from a tree that has been preserved for 30 or more years. We know that trees add value to our neighborhoods, to our city and an environment. Walking in our neighborhoods, I've felt the heat differential between lots that do have trees and lots that do not have trees, and the benefit that it provides wildlife, people, and our community. I inherently know this and understand this benefit of our urban forests and the difference between having school marms and standalone trees and what that means for our community and wildlife. When 30-year-old trees are cut down, we can't recreate that value in just 1 year or 5 years. We need to be able to preserve this value for our community so that we do have urban forests that are healthy and successful. We did set, and thank you for Yolanda and all the other staff that have worked And in the mayor's office that worked on this resolution this last year, when we understood that the ordinance could not be passed before budget, we were able to lay out the steps that needed to be accomplished for this ordinance to be successful. And that's why we set the first reporting deadline for January, so that we could get moving quickly. And I'm excited to receive the report with the scope, schedule, and budget so that we can get going and see this ordinance across the finish line this year. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's go around the table and introduce ourselves, and then as is tradition, we'll start with our own central staff, and then, but go ahead and introduce yourselves, please.
Yolanda Ho, Council Central Staff.
I'm Casey Jogurst. I'm the Permitting and Regulation Manager at the City of Portland.
Mike Podasky, Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections.
Dan Brown, Director of School of Environmental and Forest Sciences, University of Washington.
Joshua Morris, Urban Conservation Manager at Seattle Audubon.
Shonda Emery, SDCI.
Sandra Pinto Debater, Urban Forestry Advisor for the Office of Sustainability and Environment, and I also staff the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. Yolanda, please.
Yes, so I'll just provide some framing comments and then get to the presentations of our guests here. So as Councilmember-elect Strauss referenced, Resolution 31902, which was sponsored by Councilmember Bagshaw, was adopted by the Council on September 16th of this year, and it represents a joint commitment by the Council and the Mayor to work on updating tree regulations on private property over the next year. And this approach was informed by previous attempts to update regulations, as well as the City of Portland's regulations, which we will hear more about shortly. And so this work is to be conducted primarily by the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, the city department that is responsible for administering and enforcing the city's tree regulations on private property. The Office of Sustainability and Environment will provide support. OSC staffs the Urban Forestry Commission and is currently working on updating the city's urban forestry management plan, which Sandra will discuss later. Within the resolution, there were specific work plan items that were to be explored by Seattle Department of Construction Inspections and Office of Sustainability and Environment, such as adopting a definition of significant trees and requiring replacement for the removal. These all were included based on feedback from the Urban Forestry Commission, so we worked with them on that list. The resolution states that they will provide quarterly reports, and so by the end of next month, we should be seeing a kind of more detailed project scope, schedule, and budget. And we'll get a preview from the departments today and, have, I think, more detail on what updates to policy, practices, and regulations we might be expecting in the next year. So with that, I will hand it over to the next presenter.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. And thank you very much, Councilmember Peterson, for inviting the Office of Sustainability and Environment to be at the table today. Just wanted to kind of set the table in terms of what we're doing. We have 9 different departments working on urban forestry in the city, and we have a core team with representatives of 7 different departments. We created a core team to be able to provide a rapid response to emerging issues and also to move initiatives forward. The core team is currently working on updating the Urban Forest Management Plan, which sets the framework for the work that we do in terms of urban forestry policies, goals, including, I heard in public comment mention of the 30% canopy cover by 2037. So we've been working on this and to prepare to get more data. In 2016, we did a canopy cover assessment, a tree canopy cover assessment. The goal is 30%, and we learned that we're at 28%. And over the last decade, we've had several assessments done, and unfortunately, they have been different kind of technologies that are really not apples to apples in terms of comparison. So we're very excited that we now have a baseline of a 28% canopy cover. With this canopy cover, we learned a couple of things. One of them was that there tends to be fewer trees in areas where people of color and people with lower incomes tend to live. So an average of those communities' canopy cover is 20%. It's an average. We also learned that 72% of our canopy is actually in residential areas. So it really is something that we need to partner up with the community for stewardship of this resource. Based on what we learned, the core team really made a commitment to do inclusive engagement properly, to reach out and elevate the voices of historically underrepresented communities, people of color, people with low incomes, English as a second language, linguistically isolated households, immigrants and refugees, and Native Americans. And we're also working to create stronger connections to the city's climate and density objectives, and also creating stronger measures and accountability. So work that we've done to date includes inclusive engagement. We're doing it in 2 phases. So phase 1 is complete. What we did is we partnered with Seattle Public Utilities Community Connections Program, and they helped us work with community-based organizations and community liaisons to really do a good job in addressing and engaging communities in culturally appropriate ways and in language, in order to be able to get their input on initial draft plan values. And we did this before we started writing anything about the draft plan. We really wanted to start with a blank slate. And we also held listening sessions with partners, with government agencies, tree advocates, tree service providers, volunteers, and of course the Urban Forestry Commission. And all of this information is readily available at the Trees for Seattle website, and our intention is to be posting everything so that the public is aware of the work that we're doing, and they can have firsthand knowledge of all the input we're receiving. We also hired a consultant to do an initial assessment of all the city's policies and programs in terms of urban forestry. And we took all of this input, from inclusive engagement to all of our partners' input, the Urban Forestry Commission, and this assessment, and we put together a very first draft plan. So work currently underway is this year we re-engaged SPU's Community Connections to do report backs. And by that we mean that we put together draft goals, draft strategies and actions, and we wanted the group to help us, again, in culturally appropriate ways, to re-engage community, to make sure that we heard them, and that what we are putting in paper is actually reflecting their values. We are also currently incorporating departmental feedback into the draft. And next steps is we're planning on inclusive engagement phase 2. To bring a refined draft to the general public for comment in Q2 next year. And then a final update, bring the Urban Forest Management Plan to Council in late 2020. And with that, I would like to pass it on to my colleagues at SDCI.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. So SDCI is part of the core team. I can say for myself and my colleagues, we view ourselves as environmentalists. We love this city. We want to do right by the city. That's part of our role. We will contribute to the update of the forestry plan. But I wanted to just mention a couple of things that we've accomplished in the past couple of years that have helped strengthen tree protections. I know that in our observations, as we've heard in the testimony today, it might not seem like there have been improvements made, but there are some. And I wanted to emphasize, too, that there are some things that we can do to improve our practices and our interpretations of the existing code that can have a meaningful improvement or difference in the way trees are regulated in the city. So over the last 2 years, we've increased our education and information efforts to help neighbors, permit applicants, and arborists know more about the value of trees and the regulations for what can and cannot be removed and the replanting requirements. We have an updated website that is the host to this information, and then we also have information available in our permit center. We call them tip sheets, plain language, sort of explanations of code and best practices. So that's one thing. We've also improved our enforcement. In addition to codes, we have director's rules which can interpret and help us administer and enforce the codes. And we updated one in 2017 that helps clarify how fees are calculated when trees are illegally cut down, and that has resulted in increased fines and, we believe, a greater deterrent for people to act outside of what's allowed by the code. And finally, at SDCI, we've increased the resources that we put toward reviewing applications to remove trees, be they hazardous or as part of a development permit request. And that helps us be better consumers of information from arborists if they're trying to demonstrate to us that a tree is hazardous, and we think that it has improved our scrutiny of those types of requests. And these arborists that we've hired on staff are also available to assist our other permit review staff so that they can have some more informed opinions about how they should interpret permit applications. So those are three accomplishments that we've made over the last 2 years. We recognize that there's still more to do, and we want to do more. And I think in focusing on the resolution that Shonda's going to tell you more about, we can tell you about a couple other things that we think we can accomplish in the near term next year, followed by additional recommendations for some potential code updates.
Thank you. Chandra.
Thank you. I'd like to add that ongoing efforts are currently underway per Executive Order 2017-11 to increase tree protections, including work such as updating a director's rule to clarify protection of exceptional trees, including provisions for replanting when those trees are removed. Another thing that I'd like to emphasize here is that we are currently evaluating technology improvements to better track trees in the city that are allowed to be removed and trees that are required to be planted to allow for better evaluation of those trees on private property. The resolution would have SDCI and OSC make quarterly reports to the successor of the PLUS committee. The first report, as discussed, is due January 31st of next year. Included in that report will be three things: the project scope, the schedule, and the budget. The resolution outlines topics to be explored, including retaining and updating the current approach of protections for exceptional trees, simplifying tree planting and replacement requirements, and establishing an option for paying fee in lieu for planting trees. So we were asked to consider strategies that include needed housing and other infill development, and also to consider the needs for low-income and low-canopy neighborhoods while balancing tree protection goals. The city, the council and the mayor have emphasized, as Sandra said previously, the desire for including culturally and linguistically appropriate engagement plan. This is really important because we would like to include a wide range of interests in this work. We feel that including historically underrepresented communities, homeowners, renters, businesses, including developers and builders, neighborhood groups, environmental organizations, climate and environmental justice organizations in this work is very important as we move forward. We look forward to this first report in January 2020, and right now we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to hear from Professor Daniel Brown at University of Washington. We're going to get his presentation set up here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes.
As a relatively new resident of Seattle and a resident of District 4, I'm pleased to be able to provide a little bit of context. I don't have the deep background on the details of the conversation that you have before you, but have been asked to provide a bit of context from the scientific literature that addresses many of the things that we've already heard addressed so far in the public comments and in the discussion today about the benefits and distribution of tree cover that I'd offer as issues to consider as the discussions about regulations and legislation go forward. And I want to, first of all, acknowledge the deep relationship that the University of Washington has with the city of Seattle. We have an 85-year partnership in the management of the Washington Park Arboretum, which is a professionally managed arboretum, 230 acres inside the city of Seattle with a curated collection of around 46,000 plants, many of which are trees. We partner with the Trees for Seattle program through the University of Washington Botanic Gardens to distribute about 1,000 trees to Seattle residents every year. We have a relatively new program that I'll draw on just a little bit to investigate the connections between nature and health, which is an ongoing area of research. And that is a network that connects researchers at the University of Washington to a variety of practitioners, including in many departments in the city. And I was able to draw a little bit on the Green Cities Research Alliance report, which also was a partnership with a variety of groups, including the university and the city. Just a map of the Arboretum if you haven't been there. Lots of trees to enjoy. So the key points I want to make, first is to list several of the demonstrated environmental and human benefits of trees in urban areas. And I will draw specifically on scientific literature in which those benefits have been demonstrated scientifically. So I can't be a professor without considering the other side of the information that we have available, which is to recognize that there are costs and potential negative effects that can be mitigated as we think about the urban canopy and management of the urban canopy. As we've already heard, the urban canopy is distributed unevenly. This is a point that I want to point to specifically and can result in disparate social impacts. And then finally, I want to underscore that it's important that we recognize the social and ecological context of the urban canopy as we think about maximizing the benefits and minimizing the disparities and negative outcomes. So environmental benefits of urban trees. From the scientific literature, we've heard reference to carbon storage and sequestration, which is certainly an important element of trees in any environment. The 2012 Green Cities Research Alliance report reports that carbon sequestration by trees is about 2% of Seattle emissions. This is not going to be the silver bullet that addresses Seattle's emissions, but it is a piece to consider. Probably more importantly are the more proximate impacts, the air quality effects of the trees have on removing pollutants like ozone, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxides, and particulate matter, all of which have demonstrated health impacts on people. Trees have the effect of filtering those and processing those pollutants. Stormwater quality and regulation, we've heard reference to the effect that urban green space and trees in particular have on reducing the amount of water that flows over land and into the water bodies, and also in filtering the water and reducing the pollutants that are delivered to our waterways. There's general area of research and practice that refers to green infrastructure. A lot of that work is focused on green spaces generally and the filtration that comes with prairies or other kinds of vegetation. There is certainly an impact of trees in capturing the water before it reaches the ground, which is an added benefit above lawns and prairies and so forth. But less research specifically on the value of trees versus green space in the deployment of green infrastructure. I will say, though, that many cities, and I come from Michigan, and I was aware of efforts in Detroit to deploy green infrastructure as a strategy to reduce costs associated with what's traditionally referred to as gray infrastructure, the maintenance of the stormwater infrastructure. And this is an important benefit. Shading and moderation of temperature extremes is certainly important. We are fortunate in Seattle to not have experienced significant temperature extremes on a regular basis. What this means, though, is that Seattle is the least air-conditioned city in the country. And so we rely on those moderated temperatures. And trees provide for, particularly in the summer, moderation of temperatures, reduced cooling costs, and in our case, much of the cooling that we get. Noise reduction, I live just next to I-5, and I very much appreciate the trees that are around us providing a buffer from the noise that comes from I-5. And enhancing habitat and biodiversity are certainly demonstrated benefits of trees in the urban fabric, and my colleague here from the Audubon Society will talk more about that. In addition to the environmental benefits, there are a variety of demonstrated social benefits that include enhancements to leisure and recreation opportunities and quality of life. We have many cases of demonstrated impacts of trees on property values, increasing property values, and as I mentioned before, within city expenses, reductions in costs for stormwater management, air pollution removal, heating and cooling. We see health benefits from reduced stress and respiratory illness, both physical and mental health benefits. And I want to unpack the mental health benefits. This is an active area of research in our Nature for Health program. We also have very clearly visual and aesthetic benefits, both improving the scenic quality of neighborhoods and communities and also privacy provided by trees. Within the Nature and Health program at the University of Washington, there's and generally within the scientific community, an interest in understanding the ways in which nature affects human cognition and mental health. We have evidence that nature exposure can increase attention and memory and impulse inhibition and decrease stress. A lot of that work does not separate out trees particularly from other kinds of nature. There's an ongoing program of research looking at what aspects of natural features and our experience with them are relevant to mental health. We do have some studies. There's a study out of California looking at urban elementary schools showing a strong correlation between tree and shrub cover around schools and school test scores. So there's some correlational evidence looking at the benefits of tree cover in particular, tree and shrub cover in particular, on cognitive benefits, but again, ongoing research as to the mechanisms and on those, how that works. Negative impacts and costs. Many allergy sufferers will recognize the challenges with pollen and identifying. And one of the things I've learned is that there's pollen all year round here, whereas in Michigan we had a respite in the winter. The insect and animals that are using trees as habitat can become nuisances within neighborhoods. Visual and aesthetic impacts. Lighting-related safety concerns where you have darkness associated with a heavy tree canopy. We might have concerns about safety. The branches and leaves that fall off of trees can provide messiness to the environment. And of course, view obstruction. Views are very important in the city of Seattle, and trees can obstruct views. We have some known environmental hazards. I'm not here to say, as President Reagan did, that trees cause pollution, but there are isoprenes and terpenes, volatile organic compounds put off by trees that can interact with pollutants in the atmosphere and enhance pollution, although I think that, again, isn't the biggest concern with air pollution in the city. Sidewalk cracks and safety issues are certainly an issue and require maintenance. And so all of this, there are costs associated with planting and establishment trees. We've heard about the importance of maintaining trees and irrigation, management, repairing infrastructure, and so forth. All of these do require attention. Social disparities in tree cover. There's a wonderful title for a paper called Trees Grow on Money, which shows a consistent, strong, positive correlation between household income and urban tree cover in neighborhoods. That particular study looked at correlations across 7 cities. The strongest correlation was with income. In some cities, there was also a correlation with race, with less tree cover in neighborhoods with more people of color. An interesting paradox in this literature is that efforts to increase urban greening, because trees do increase property values, might be potentially mechanism by which gentrification of neighborhoods is accelerated. So something that we need to think about those complexities as we go forward. This is from the 2012 report, just showing across management units in the city of Seattle the differences in tree cover. We do see on the left-hand side of this graph declines in the amount of canopy cover from less dense single-family residential homes towards more dense multifamily and commercial mixed-use neighborhoods. And that's not too surprising given that we have differences in configurations of the neighborhoods and the built environment. This is simply to point to the contextual factors. When we talk about urban trees, we're often talking about an urban forest, a canopy across the city, but we're maintaining and thinking about individual trees. So the goal that we're talking about is a canopy cover across the city, but we're maintaining that through decisions about individual trees. And so we need to think about the context within which we're managing the forest canopy going down to the individual tree level. And this is just illustrating some of those benefits at different scales. And so I just want to highlight that context affects outcomes. The individual tree and forest structure and physiology affects the outcomes. We've heard reference to the importance of big trees, tree density, leaf area, leaf biomass, whether it's an evergreen or deciduous tree. All of these factors might be important in affecting the benefits and the costs associated with trees. The character of the built environment, lot sizes, street configurations, structural density, and land use all might be nuances that are relevant to the ways in which we think about managing the urban canopy. The environmental conditions, certainly visibility, I mentioned temperature, precipitation, soils, topographic position. And I would bring in here, I don't have a specific slide or reference to climate change, but as we think about managing a canopy for the next 30 or 50 years, we certainly want to be thinking about the ways in which those conditions will be changing in the next 30 to 50 years with perhaps drier and hotter summers, with perhaps more extreme rain events. It's hard. We would need to look into the literature on what's predicted for Seattle. So as we think about planning and management of urban trees, we should recognize those contexts to maximize the benefits. Summary of the key points here. Trees have demonstrated environmental and human benefits, some associated costs and negative impacts. Uneven distribution of the urban canopy is important, leading to disparate social impacts, and we want to look at the context of the urban canopy. And I have provided some references to.
Excellent. Thank you, Doctor. So we're going to hear from two more presenters, Joshua Morris from the Urban Forestry Commission and Seattle Audubon, and then we have a guest up from the city of Portland as well. We're going to switch PowerPoint presentations here quickly.
Which one is it? That's probably this one.
Yeah, his, right.
Shall we change spots?
Yeah. And Dr. Brown, we understand if you have to get to your next appointment. Thank you for being here. Okay.
Until 11.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson, for organizing this. And
presentation.
let's see, this is a PDF, so we'll just swap down.
Full screen, how do you get to that?
View, maybe?
View. Full screen mode.
Full screen mode.
Great. Thank you. Again, thank you for organizing this, and Councilmember-elect Strauss, it's great to have you here as well. Thank you to both for demonstrating your commitment to the urban forest. I think that's great. Again, I'm Joshua Morris. I'm with the Seattle Audubon Society. I also sit on the Urban Forestry Commission, but I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here on behalf of birds and people. For context, Seattle Audubon has been advocating for Seattle's urban forest since our founding in 1916. One of our organization's first advocacy efforts was around protecting our city parks and open spaces from illegal logging. I found newsletters from the 80s that are pushing city council for stronger tree protections. We've got a history, 100 years plus, of advocating for trees, and here I am still waving that banner. Seattle's urban forest is surprisingly diverse and relatively luxe compared to many other cities. We have a lot to be proud of. We also face challenges including tree loss, equitable tree distribution, and climate change. I spend a lot of my time advocating for trees because we envision people and birds thriving in our local communities, and we can't realize that without a healthy, protected urban forest. As Professor Brown was mentioning, our urban forest provides real tangible benefits to the city, its residents, and visitors. A lot of those services can be quantified with a dollar value. However, some are more difficult to hang a dollar sign on, particularly those from the cultural services. However, as that 2012 report found, Seattle's urban forest provides approximately $23 million in annual savings to the city in terms of carbon sequestration, pollution removal, and residential energy savings. This should be viewed as a basement value. It doesn't include any values related to stormwater management, recreation values at parks, and other such cultural values. The report also found that the urban forest replacement costs would be around $4.9 billion. And it's interesting to note that our urban forest has grown into an infrastructural asset that would outprice the SR 99 tunnel downtown. The benefits of the urban forest don't begin and end with humans, however. There are over 100 bird species that use Seattle's trees. This includes local resident birds like the red-breasted nuthatch and seasonal migratory visitors like the Wilson's warbler. These forest birds, or the forest these birds would have accessed 200 years ago, would have been very different from our urban forest today. Then, big old conifers dominated, western hemlocks, Douglas fir, western red cedar, but there would have been Gary oak savannas, coastal prairies, peat bogs, and extensive wetlands around the lakes in the mouth of the Duwamish. Urbanization over the last 170 years has drastically altered nature in our city, including the introduction of trees from around the world. There are approximately 54 tree species native to the Pacific Northwest. That includes from Oregon all the way up to Vancouver, BC. Today, in just Seattle alone, we might be able to find 1,000 tree types, including subspecies, cultivars, and varieties. These changes have been good for some birds. For instance, the Anna's hummingbird, there's an image of it feeding two nestlings there in the center of this slide. Seattle Audubon has been counting birds each Christmas for the last 90 years. We started in 1928, and we didn't document a single Anna's hummingbird until 1965. In 1972, we haven't stopped seeing them since. I suspect this is due to new stable winter food sources provided by winter flowering plants and trees, and people hanging nectar feeders around their homes. So my takeaway from this is that if we maintain and enhance the diversity of our urban forest, we can provide stable year-round resources for diversity and abundance of birds. This becomes increasingly important in an era of climate change. This last October, the National Audubon Society updated their science of climate change vulnerability for 604 bird species in North America. Their findings are dire. 389 species of those are projected to lose over 50% of their breeding habitat under a 3-degree warming scenario. These birds will be forced to find suitable nesting conditions elsewhere, and they may not survive. 108 of these climate-threatened birds occur in our own backyard. Some, like the dark-eyed junco, are extremely common in Seattle, and it's hard to imagine our neighborhoods without them. Our urban forest can help. Our urban forest, like the Anna's hummingbird, other species may benefit when we maintain and enhance the diversity, structure, and connectivity and distribution of our trees. The urban forest may be able to provide this abundant year-round resources for birds as climate change introduces uncertainty in more natural ecosystems. Diversity is particularly important, and it's something we can be relatively proud of in Seattle. For instance, I did some calculations to compare street tree diversity in 5 different cities where data were available. The key column is to the right, effective number of genera. This provides a comparable indicator of the diversity of our street tree communities. Seattle's value is 23. This compares to Buffalo's 14.6. Ours is 57% more diverse than Buffalo, New York street tree community, 28% more diverse than New York City's, 35% more diverse than Vancouver, BC's. Only Portland scores more favorably, but just by 2%, and they have a bigger city area anyway. The diversity of our urban forest is enhanced further by trees on private property, parks, arboreta, and institutions. You can meet trees from every tree-bearing continent on a walk through Seattle. Single-family residential properties are reportedly harbor the greatest diversity and the greatest number of conifers. We often lose these trees on this type of property as we make room for more neighbors in our city. Unfortunately, we've not been tracking how many or of which kinds of trees we've been losing from private property in a meaningful way. The Urban Forestry Commission has recommended capturing that info through a tree removal and replacement permit and an associated database. Those data could help guide us in our replanting efforts to maintain and enhance diversity. Structural diversity is also important. Different birds have different needs and use forest resources in different ways. Sparrows tend to forage on the ground layer and benefit from leaf litter. Hummingbirds nest in the shrub layer. Chickadees glean insects a bit higher up in the understory, and eagles seek good vantage points in the tops of trees. Tree groves tend to provide this structural diversity. Though largely concentrated in parks, groves are still scattered throughout our neighborhoods and institutional lands. Protecting groves is something that the Urban Forestry Commission is recommending in their draft ordinance submitted to the council. Replacing groves is extremely challenging in neighborhoods where plantable space is scarce. Seattle Audubon has been counting birds in Seattle area parks for decades, and what we've been able to do is look at the observation frequency of certain forest-dependent species like brown creepers, varied thrush, or pileated woodpeckers, and see how that correlates with tree canopy cover at those parks. So the graph on the right here shows an observation frequency index on the y-axis, which basically means how often do we see these birds when we go out looking. On the bottom axis, there's a percent canopy cover increasing from left to right. We've plotted 7 different parks here, and you find what we'd expect. As canopy cover increases, we tend to see more of these forest-dependent species. However, you'll notice at the very top, Seward Park is an extreme outlier. We see birds these forest-dependent birds almost every time we go out and look, despite the fact that it has a similar canopy cover to Carkeek Park. If you've ever been there, you might know that Carkeek Park is dominated by deciduous big-leaf maples and red alders, whereas Seward Park is dominated by some of the last remaining old-growth conifers in Seattle. And though this data doesn't prove it, one hypothesis could be that those big old conifers are providing superior habitat values to forest-dependent species than some of the deciduous species do. Another thing I'd point out about this graph is that the modeled trend is logarithmic, meaning that small changes in canopy cover can have big impacts on what happens to our observations of birds. The last point about this is that once we reach about 20% canopy cover, we don't observe these birds anymore. So there may be thresholds at which canopy cover determines whether or not these birds can persist in our city. And that's important to think about as we're thinking about the canopy cover across our city and connectivity. Connectivity would mean dense pathways of connected contiguous habitat across the city, but also making sure that our neighborhoods can support a diversity and abundance of birds too. And one coarse way of looking at that is just kind of at the 2016 LIDAR canopy assessment scale. And at first glance, it looks pretty good. Seattle looks pretty good, but it's unevenly distributed. So here are some maps of the canopy cover broken down by neighborhood throughout Seattle. Green indicates canopy cover in excess of the threshold indicated at the bottom of each map, while blue indicates lower than the threshold indicated at the bottom of the map. So 28% is the aggregate citywide total of canopy cover across the city. Many of our communities are lacking that level of canopy cover. And over a dozen have less or equal to 20% canopy cover. For context, the city of LA has a canopy cover of 20%. Dozens of our neighborhoods have a canopy cover lower than Los Angeles. In these neighborhoods, we wouldn't expect to see some of those charismatic birds like the pileated woodpecker or the brown creeper. And further, there are some really tree deficient neighborhoods, including the International District in Georgetown, Belltown, and some of the other downtown core communities. addressing these equity issues is something that I know our urban forestry management teams is tackling, but it's crucially important, especially when making sure that our communities are resilient to the impacts of climate change. So before I finish, I just want to make the point that the most important thing that we can do for our urban forest is to protect the trees that we already have. The urban forest is a high-value investment that has been maturing for decades. It can take only a moment to fall a tree and lose that investment. A stronger, funded, enforced tree protection ordinance will help protect our urban forest as part of a comprehensive strategy that anticipates future conditions and needs for birds and wildlife. So thank you.
Thank you. We're really pleased to have somebody from the city of Portland come up here this morning. Thank you very much for coming here to share some of the wisdom and lessons learned from our city down south.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite. Again, my name is Casey Jogerst. I'm the Urban Forestry Permitting and Regulation Manager within the city of Portland. So first, I just want to start off and applaud the city of Seattle for really thinking about this and looking to further strengthen their tree ordinance and tree codes and regulations, because everybody has mentioned here, we are in essentially a climate crisis, and so the way in which we manage our trees needs to be modernized along with the way in which we're changing. And so it's really important to continue to think about that and continue to make those initiatives forward, because it does take time, and it sounds like the city of Seattle's been at it for some time. And so kind of shifting into the city of Portland, I can speak to that same component in terms of the time that it takes. Before I was in the city of Portland, I believe, I don't know the full number of years, but it took a number of years to get to the updated tree code. And that was passed by council in 2011. And then due to funding components, it wasn't implemented until 2015. So that's quite a significant amount of time and important to think about as you're thinking about changing ordinances and the funding that is necessary in order to go along with that. So as I mentioned, in 2015, the city of Portland implemented their new tree code, and the purpose of that was very similar in terms of strengthening the regulations around trees, and then more significantly, it really broadened the regulations on private property, because I think I heard here mentioned as well is that is where a majority of canopy exists. And when we're looking at an urban canopy, it's not just the city and street trees that are on city property or in the right of way, it's also those trees that are on private property. And so as of 2015, within the city of Portland, that's when all private trees over a certain size threshold became regulated. There were some that were regulated in the past that I won't get into the details, but it was a really, really small portion of that. And really important in terms of the tree code, which in the city of Portland is called Title 11, is that it was implemented and sort of brought about one by community advocates and then carried forth through the city in order to strengthen the fact that trees are infrastructure. And in the city of Portland, we often talk about, you have city traffic engineers and city engineers, and those are managing your water pipes and your sewer systems, as well as your street systems and transportation. And trees are just as an important component of that infrastructure. And so the tree code within City of Portland was to sort of speak to that the city forester, and I'm going to get a little bit into structure as well, is an authority over a really important component of the city's livability, and as well as just the aesthetic value, monetary value, and what that city is made up of. So to kind of think a little bit more about what's happening here, and I don't know all the details, but I've heard quite a bit today and done some reading myself, and I think I heard that there's 9 different departments that are working on regulations, and that is something when the City of Portland worked on their new tree code, it was to really simplify for the public, because there's trees everywhere, as we mentioned, and there's different regulations that sort of overlap with one another. And so the tree code gave the ultimate authority to the city forester within the urban forestry division. And then there's components of that code that are also managed and regulated through the Bureau of Development Services. And that's because development also has a pretty strong relationship to trees. And so that is one thing that I would say in terms of what I'm hearing from the city of Seattle, is that unifying that as much as possible, because I can only imagine the challenges that you would be faced with having 9 different departments trying to consistently and correctly manage and enforce tree regulations. Also, the outreach component in terms of implementing a new tree code is extremely important. We're 6 years or so into our new tree code, and we still have some struggles with the community understanding what changed, how it changed, why it changed. And so we find numerous residents within enforcement situations just due to a lack of outreach. So I can't stress enough to make sure that the community is involved, aware, and that there's a big campaign that goes out if there are changes to what your tree code is, especially as we mentioned, because those trees are on private property are a huge component to what that urban canopy is made up of. And so those are the people that you want to make sure understand what's happening, and so that they can really do voluntary compliance, right? Ultimately, when we think about a tree code, that's the goal. You know, there are components of that we do need to put into place in terms of managing that, but the goal of a tree code is to try to manage voluntary compliance. But if people aren't aware of it, then you're already kind of putting yourself down a step. So I want to talk a bit about what we've, I guess, faced in terms of challenges with the tree code in Portland in the first few years, as well as some lessons learned. So in terms of structure, I would say that trees in development are probably the most significant challenge that we face at the moment, which seems very relatable to the city of Seattle. And we do have, well, I should say when the code first came out, there was a fee in lieu that was placed for trees in developments, but that fee in lieu doesn't equate directly to preservation. It is an avenue to buy your way out of preservation, for lack of better terms. And so for those of you that maybe follow the news in Portland, in 2016, there was a significant uproar in the city of Portland for 2 giant sequoias that were going to get removed. And I think I heard in public testimony a similar situation where the community had to band together to come up with money in order to save those trees and essentially purchase the lot from the developer to prevent the trees from being removed. And that made its way into city council. And so there was an emergency amendment essentially made to the tree code, and that was to require an inch per inch fee in lieu for any trees 36 inches and greater. So before that, it was sort of a tiered approach depending upon the size threshold of a tree. But currently, as you hit a 36-inch threshold, if you are not going to preserve that tree, which that would be the first intent, you're going to have to pay the fee in lieu. And at the moment in the city of Portland, that's at $450 an inch. So you can take that by your 36 inches, and that's the very lowest that you can begin to pay if you're looking at a tree 36 inches and greater. So that was a challenge that we faced and that we're still facing. And just as of last week, this emergency amendment that was put in place in 2016 had a sunset date of December 31st of this year. And so it's been in city council right now and has definitely brought about some other challenges that we're facing. And so currently that size threshold, and this is one thing that I would say in terms of lessons learned, yes, 36 inches is a significant tree, but where exactly does that number come from? And to really think about when you are, if you're deciding that a fee in lieu is based on a size, or I've heard conversations about significant or exceptional trees. If you're using a size, why are you using that size? What's the rationale for that size? And so currently there's conversation going on within the City of Portland and City Council about should the threshold for the 36-inch be lowered to 20-inch, and then potentially further in terms of where is this number. And if you do dive into the details of City of Portland's tree code, 12 inches is a significant number, and that's sort of where we start from. So there's conversation as well as, should it start at 12 inches? And so we have a draft resolution in council right now to look at that. The sunset date was extended, and so we have another 5 years. And I think I heard some maybe public testimony about data, and that was the reason that was extended. It was in order to really do some data analysis between both Portland Parks Recreation Urban Forestry Division and the Bureau of Development Services, since we both have authority over certain components of the tree code, and really understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and have the data to support what proposal may go back. So I also want to speak to you about the fee in lieu, because I don't know if there is one that's existing right now in the City of Seattle, or it's a proposal. Okay, so it's a proposal. So again, as I mentioned already, the fee in lieu is not necessarily preservation, and so to think really carefully about that fee in lieu, where you set it at, who it's intended for. In the City of Portland, we've experienced a significant development boom, and so sometimes the price tag that's put on a fee in lieu is not as much of a disincentive as we would have hoped it to be. And also I do want to speak to sort of the benefits of a fee in lieu as well, because there are sometimes reasons why a fee in lieu does get used, and in the City of Portland, it gets put into a tree and preservation fund that has very strict rules around what it can be used for, and essentially is used to put trees back. And we've done a number of analyses to understand low-income, low-canopy areas within our city, and so we prioritize those locations when utilizing the funds that come out of the Tree and Planting Preservation Fund, where the fee in lieu is placed. Some other challenges that we've faced that are sitting in City Council right now are exemptions. I'm not sure the details of the City of Seattle's tree code, but there are exemptions within the City of Portland, and this is primarily within the development chapter, and it has to do with commercial and industrial zones. Commercial and industrial zones tend to be sort of along waterways and in areas where there is high air pollution, and essentially areas that you need the trees. And so that is another component of the resolution that we're looking at in the City of Portland is, do those exemptions need to be there, and are they essentially a disservice to the community in terms of why they were placed there? And those exemptions, again, exempt the development from having to pay fee in lieu as well. So it's not just preservation, but it's also fee in lieu, and it's also replacement planting. So I'd say that that's been a lesson learned, that those exemptions, when they were first put in place, had to do with the urban growth boundary and the potential for there not to be enough buildable land. And it was intended to always be looked at again. And so now is the time where it's being brought forth to really be looked at. So if you do have exemptions that you're proposing in there, you want to think about what the long-term effect of those may be, or if there's a time frame that needs to be put on them. I also wanted to talk a little bit about sort of that structure that I started with, based on some things that I heard. And it sounds like with 9 different departments, it's really difficult to enforce. And I want to relate that to the City of Portland, because when the new tree code came around, the Bureau of Planning, or the Bureau of Development Services, where planning and zoning does housing permits, those inspectors are still performing those types of inspections, but we've shifted the tree inspections to the tree inspector staff who are under the Urban Forestry Division, because they are the experts. So I won't say it doesn't cause its own challenges because there's two different groups of people doing inspections, but it does allow for those with the expertise to perform the inspections and know that it's accurate and intended to be what it was once on plans as what it is that's built out into the city. So I would urge for you to look at that if there is a potential, because it can be very challenging for those who are performing sort of electrical, mechanical. Those are all trade areas of expertise as well, and to add on trees, it's really challenging to find people who might have that broad spectrum of knowledge base. I also want to talk just briefly about space within the right-of-way. That is a significant challenge that the city of Portland is facing. I would imagine city of Seattle as well. And I don't have any magical answers for that. But again, kind of reiterating that trees are infrastructure and extremely valuable. And all of the utilities and everything that need to be placed in the right-of-way, there is and there can be and there needs to be the room for trees as well. There are certain cities that you can look up. I think Josh had put the New York City up there, and I had worked there briefly, and it's referred to often as the concrete jungle. And I'm not sure if anyone's familiar, but they put a campaign on the Million Trees campaign, where essentially it was a mayor initiative to plant trees in all locations where trees were able to be planted. And that was the result of not thinking forward about placing the trees as development was ongoing until it became so much concrete that there had to be a significant initiative in order to put the green back in. And so I think the city of Portland and the city of Seattle, a lot of us on the West Coast need to be thinking about that so that we don't end up in that place and have to think about where we find the funds now to put everything back that we've lost. I guess lastly, I spoke a little bit about environmental justice in terms of where we plant trees, but just thinking about equity as in a lens of everything that you're doing when you're thinking about trees, because as the research has shown us, typically those low-income neighborhoods are the ones with low canopy, and whatever initiatives that are put forth and especially put into code should help to promote that, or not promote that, but to fix that and promote the equity within the urban canopy. So that's all I have for you today, but I'm happy to stick around a little bit if there's any specific questions about the city of Portland, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you. In a minute, we'll go back to, I'll be extending the public comment period, but didn't know if the executive wanted to make any more comments, or if Councilmember like Strauss had any questions, or while we have the city of Portland here.
I just wanted to make a clarification. We have 9 departments that actually do urban forestry work, but they are not all working on this specific set of regulations.
Okay.
The Parks and Recreation does manage trees on developed parks and natural areas, and SDOT manages trees in the right-of-way, but everything else pretty much falls into SDCI's tree regulations. And I don't know if you guys want to clarify anything.
In the interest of time, I don't have anything else to add, except maybe that, we do often trade success and lessons learned stories with the city of Portland and other like cities around the country, and we look forward to working with them more in the future on this.
Great.
I just want to take a moment to thank everyone, Audubon Society, SDCI, City of Portland for coming down, up or down. And to all the advocates in the room as well, please keep up your advocacy. We need to be able to pass this year, and there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of outreach to be done, and some fine-tuning. As we heard from the City of Portland, there were a number of years that it took to see their tree ordinance passed, implemented, and the education to be effective for all of the residents. While we've been working on this for 10 years already in fits and starts, I don't believe that 10 years is apples to apples comparison with the City of Portland, and it just demonstrates for us that we do have quite a bit of work to do, and I'm excited to get this work done.
Thank you. And I do want to emphasize that for development of legislation and policy, it's so helpful for us to have people from the scientific community. So Professor Brown from University of Washington, was great to hear from him, to look at what other cities are doing so we're not reinventing the wheel. We have so much expertise within our departments and on our central staff as well. So we'll look forward to collaborating and working together to make it a stronger tree ordinance and to enforce it. So now I'd like to extend the public comment period for another 20 minutes at least. So that's going to be 2 minutes per speaker. Our presenters can go ahead and take a seat or go back to where they need to go, but really appreciate them being here. I'll read from the sign-in sheet. We'll pick up where we left off. So next up to come to the microphone, we have Steve Zemke, Tricia Sills, and Richard Ellison. Oh, did I get the wrong thing? Oh, wait, we're gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll get back into the regular order. Go ahead, Mr. Zemke.
Okay. My name's Steve Zemke. I'm chair of Tree Pack, Friends of Seattle's Urban Forest, and also have worked with the chair of the Coalition for a Stronger Tree Ordinance. Want to note that there are a lot of provisions already in our current ordinance. Was written in 2001. The reality is that some of those provisions have not been enforced, and that's been part of the problem. One of the particular ones that we and community groups and the Urban Forestry Commission has raised is Seattle Municipal Code 2511090, which actually said that developers should replace all trees 24 inches and larger and exceptional trees either on site or somewhere on city property. Our best exploration of this is that the city has not been doing this. There's no record of trees lost. There's no record of any funds of trees that have lost that have been replaced anywhere where they are. There's no record of any funds being given to the city to plant those trees. So they basically have not been replanted. So we hope that in this draft the Urban Forestry Commission has come up with, we looked at Portland, we've looked at other cities, and it's been a 10-year effort from the Urban Forestry Commission. The draft they produced, it says we need a permit system. Why? So that members of the public know when trees are being removed. We already have a permit system in our city that works. That is SDOT system, which requires a permit for tree removal and replacement, and also posting for those trees. Want to note that in terms of the age of trees and this discussion with Portland in terms of the size of trees, that Douglas fir tree supposedly has a growth factor of 1 inch in 5 years. So if you look at a 30-inch tree, that's going to be 150 years old. We have from the canopy study that there are only about 6,000 trees that are 30 inches and larger. So that's what we're looking at in terms of trying to protect those, because those provide the most value, as well as preserving other trees that are going to have to be there to replace those trees. They're not going to last forever. So again, thank you for your support and moving forward and holding this meeting today.
Thank you. So we're going to hear from Tricia Sills, Richard Ellison, and then I'm going to go back to the regular order of Maria Batiola.
Hi, I live in the Maple Leaf neighborhood and am concerned about Maple Leaf, which has many exceptional trees, as well as Pinehurst. And there's a new development by a common developer that we all know, and there's a lot there that's going to be logged off. And there was a very extensive assessment of the trees on this lot, and 3 were determined to be exceptional. Well, they're going to take down 1 house and put up 3. And they've deemed that 2 of these exceptional trees, because of pruning due to power lines, are now going to be a threat to the development due to wind, so they can be taken down. Then there was 1 other on the property line that was deemed exceptional, but they decided that because of the development of this property, they were going to impose on the one side of the root structure that was probably going to destroy the tree in the long run anyway. So that was deemed okay to take down. So we've just lost 3 exceptional trees on 1 lot, not to mention all the other more minor trees on this property. And we need this moratorium because all these things are happening right under our eyes. And it needs to stop until something gets in place and there's a rule that stops this.
Hello, my name is Richard Ellison. I live in the Wedgwood community. Recently, there were 2 lots in Wedgwood which had 11 trees. Some of them were significant trees, and the entire lot was cleared, and it was replaced with 3 new homes. There are some small trees that are planted, but the loss of 11 large trees on a parcel seems a bit excessive. The Seattle Comprehensive Plan calls for 4 core values. One of them is environmental stewardship. However, we're dragging our heels here. Everyone says, oh, it's been 10 years since we've been working on this. No, that's incorrect. We've been working on this for over 20 years. In 1998, Jan Drago formed the Urban Forest Work Group. I was a member of that work group. That work group included people from the Chamber of Commerce, Master Builders Association, Seattle Audubon Society, Plant Amnesty, Save Seattle's Trees, legal department from the City of Seattle, Department of Construction and Land Use, which is now DCI. This thing has been going on for a long time. I have memos here from Diane Sugamura from DCLU from October 1999 about the tree protection legislation administrative recommendations from back then. This game has been kicked down the road for too long. We can say, oh, we need more time to review. We need more public meetings, public hearings. Well, we had those public meetings and public hearings. There were workshops. There were city council public hearings in 1999, 1998. This game has been going on too long. Record temperature, 103 degrees in Seattle in the year 2009. This year, was the hottest year on record, but not in Seattle. Oh, it was easy this last nice summer. It was cooler. Then, of course, a couple summers before, we had forest fires making the air quality terrible for years. We're wondering, well, geez, every summer we're going to have this terrible air quality in Seattle. Save Seattle's trees. Something must be done now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Maria Badayola, Deirdre Curley, and Jim Davis.
Congratulations to you both. Thank you so much. I'm going to do a quick one on the trees. I come from Beacon Hill Council, and my name is Maria Batiola. So we really need to increase our tree canopy because we're surrounded by air and noise pollution emission sources. 120,000 cars on I-90, 250,000 cars on I-5, Rainier, MLK, airplanes every 90 seconds from 70 to 90 decibels, and SeaTac has proposed to double international flights, triple air cargo, and go from 47 to 66 million passengers. When you talk about an environmental justice community, we're 70 to 80% people of color, 44% immigrants and refugees. So with that, I'd also like to switch to another topic, which is so key in the Plou's life, and that is Councilwoman Herbold's anti-displacement proposal. On behalf of Ruby Holland for Keep Your Habitat, Reverend Harriet Walden, co-founder of Mothers for Police Accountability, John Fox, Seattle Displacement Coalition, Reverend David Bloom, founding director of Interfaith Task Force on Homelessness, Alice Wold, Fixed Democracy First Education, K.L. Shannon from Seattle MLK Organizing Coalition, David Ward from Seattle Coalition for Affordability, Livability, and Equity, Juan Bocanegra from All in Washington, and myself from Beacon Hill. We really appreciate that Seattle and King County just approved joint emergency response to homelessness, and that the council and the mayor are funding more affordable and low-income housing. However, what is missing is taking a look at the displacement and other factors, figuring out what the displacement is. We would really like you to put forward a public hearing on Councilwoman Herbold's anti-displacement proposal, so we as the public can weigh in with our lived experience and be able to improve that. This is very, very important to us, and you are really, literally the gatekeeper on this particular item. Thank you so much to the both of you.
Thank you. Jim Davis, Barbara Bernard. Is Deirdre still here? How about Jim Davis? And then Barbara Bernard, Kathy Kirchhoff, Susan Zeman.
I'm Deirdre Curl. I'm also with the Beacon Hill Council.
and a resident of Beacon Hill. And I'm just here to advocate for my neighborhood. We are disproportionately impacted by air noise and air pollution from both I-90, I-5, and being right under the flight path to SeaTac Airport. We really need good trees in our neighborhood to help protect our environment. We are also a neighborhood that is, has lower SES and a high proportion of people of color and also people who do not speak English. And we're just here to ask for a stronger tree canopy to protect our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Davis, Barbara Bernard, Kathy Kirchhoff.
Hi, I'm Jim Davis, and I'm a volunteer with the Last 6,000 campaign, which is a civic campaign to locate the last trees in Seattle of 30 inches and greater in trunk diameter. I have to say that we started the campaign last April. We've had nearly 1,200 trees now submitted by the people of Seattle through the campaign. They're coming in from every neighborhood. And I have to say, this is the first volume of our reference book for our majestic trees. And actually, after listening to Josh, I want to go see how many eucalyptus trees are in there right now. You know, I don't pretend to represent all the viewpoints of the hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people that have submitted trees through this campaign. But I would state that they have definitely voted with their feet and their cameras that large trees are important to them. And I hope that you take this into consideration as you proceed in looking at, you know, proceeding on what we can do to protect large trees.
Thank you. Barbara Bernard, Kathy Kirchhoff, Susan Zeman.
Hi, I'm Barbara Bernard, concerned Seattle citizen. I want to say thank you for listening to us and extending the comment period today. And I also want to note that I'm privileged to be able to take time away from work to actually come and attend session. And I know so many other people who are equally as passionate and concerned who don't have that privilege to take time away from work. Seattle needs to be more forward-thinking when it comes to preserving our urban canopy. Development and density must be approached with a smart design that considers existing connective environments and that existing footprint. In my own experience on my block in the past 4 years, I've seen 2 houses demolished, the lots scraped bare, as many others have demonstrated today, and taking down several mature trees and canopy. These mature trees were just under requirements to be considered exceptional. They were like 28, 29 inches, and they were Doug firs that are required to be 30 inches to be considered exceptional. So you know, like within 1 or 2 more years, they would have met that threshold. I know that in our own home, it was built on an ECA, so we're starting to see that where it was built, the adjacent lot is showing erosion, and that's mostly in due in part because of the continuing taking down of the neighboring trees on our block, something that we hadn't planned for or expected with the stormwater runoff. That's a result of the missing canopy. Our neighbor across from us sold their home, and now there's going to be a developer putting on 6 units, scraping a lot that is currently a 37% canopy with an over 70-foot Doug fir that will also be lost, which is currently home stellar jays, squirrels, urban woodlife, and of course the occasional great blue heron that comes in and visits between Elliott Bay and Salmon Bay on its way to the rookery. So I just wanted to put that out there that if a moratorium can be enacted, a good time would be now, because we know that in 2016, the tree canopy audit was done, and we knew it was at 28%. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Zeman, Robert Kirby.
Hi, I'm Kathy Kirchhoff, and I live in Ballard in the urban village. And I have told people that I never wanted to live in New York. I didn't expect New York to come to me. On my one block, we lost a 6-story black walnut tree that was a minimum of 75 years old, another deciduous tree that was 4 stories tall, and a fir tree that was probably 20 inches in diameter. That is just on one block. What's created is that everything is being, like, you have 3 buildings. They're totally filling up the lot. And when you have the other side of the block get developed with the same thing, all you have is hardscape. That is not making for a sustainable city. Do you want to have a city that is all concrete and is only inhabited by people and their cats and dogs? Because that's what we're heading towards, unless we say just a minute. I have a little bit of, I've seen a tremendous impact on the birds in my neighborhood. You hardly hear any birds anymore. I used to let some Chinese mustard grow through the winter, go to seed, 4 feet tall with great big branches full of seeds, and the house thrush used to strip it. I haven't seen a house thrush in 2 years. Those plants are untouched. There's a food source, and there's no animal, no bird to feed on it, other than the rats. Ballard's great for that.
Thank you. Susan Zeman, Robert Kirby, and I think Martha Baskin's no longer speaking.
Hi, thank you for having us here today. And I had written a bunch of notes with a lot of important scientific information about trees and why we need them, but I don't need to say any of that because we have heard so much from speakers and from the people at the table. So I'm wiping all that off my chart. And I just want you to know that I am a nurse, I'm a mother, I'm a volunteer forest steward with the City Parks Department, and I am a resident of new construction, affordable housing in one of our dense transit-oriented urban villages. So I am not anti-development. I am aware that by promoting urban density, we are reducing suburban and exurban density and all of the tree cutting and the climate change that comes along with that. However, we are Seattle. We are a smart city. We can have development and trees, and we need to have both of those for all the reasons that we've heard here today. We need more trees. We need to stop cutting down the trees that we have right now. We need to have tree-safe areas, like this lovely woman from Portland was talking about, in terms of street trees and street infrastructure and sidewalks that accommodate tree roots. All these excuses that we hear from the Department of Development all the time about why this tree and that tree had to go. We need to do a better job about saving the trees that we have. I'll just leave it there. You got the gist of it. But I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. Martha Baskin's no longer speaking. Margaret Richard, Drew Foster, Woody Wheeler.
Hello, thank you for hosting us today. My name is Robert Kirby, and I represent every homeowner, every citizen, every apartment renter in the city, and every visitor to the city. I have planted many trees in my yard. I've lived in my house for 40 years. I don't have any exceptional trees. I have trees that have been planted 10 years ago. One of them is, well, I've tried many native trees. Some grow fast, some grow slow. The faster growing ones tend to live for a shorter period of time. When we talk about exceptional trees or replacing trees, there was a gentleman here who spoke of the length of time it takes to become an exceptional tree. I think looking at how trees grow, the Taxiflora Taxus benefolia that I planted about 12 years ago is now this big around and this tall. That's a native tree here. It's a native tree species. And it will take probably hundreds of years if anyone lets it grow that long. In closing, I want to say that I'm a teacher. I'm a retired teacher, and I spent my last 10 years helping people learn how to teach math. We found that it takes hundreds of repetition before people understand how to do math. It takes hundreds of repetition before people understand things. We need to begin immediately with some education, both for adults and younger people. Finally, don't get old, it's hard to remember things. I would like to propose one last thing, and I'll try to do it really quick because I see my time's done. I've heard the payment in lieu, and I would like to propose that we also think of a payment for keeping trees, perhaps
We need you
property tax
to
reduction.
let the other people speak. Thank you very much. Marguerite Richard, Drew, Woody Wheeler.
Yes, good day, everyone. I'm here once again because I know that it's important to have trees. So the lady asked me about the tree. Did I know about trees? I said, yeah, the tree of life. Trees don't want to be mountains. They just praise the Lord. And I praise the Lord too. But on a serious note, because you're over planning, this says Planning, Land Use, and Zoning Committee. And I have some unfinished business with your committee that Mr. Johnson left undone. So I have a lot to say about how we could sit here beyond public comment, intercept it. Every place I go, they don't intercept our public comment. They give us our time, and then we're out of there. And so when I sat there, I said, well, maybe people have physical impairments and ailments and whatnot, and they can't sit all this time. So I said, well, why do we have to have it chopped up? Well, this city likes to chop other people up too, give them trespasses, and then you sit there and you have a person such as Ms. Gonzalez, 5 times violating the oath on it, omission, and then we can come down here and have our time interrupted and get trespasses and get people all feeling like they're intimidated to have their free speech when you didn't even write the Constitution yourself. Look like all of us in the room came after the Constitution was written. So I'm wondering what people are doing now with people's rights now, if we weren't there when it all began. So we have a problem that we need to fix. So I hope you will continue to engage with these constituents that come down here. Some, like you said, Portland, that's a long way to have to travel to have something to say. And so I have my little tree lit up today. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays. Thank you. Drew Foster, Woody Wheeler.
Hi, thank you for having this meeting. My name is Drew Foster. I'm a resident of District 3. So we've already heard about all the benefits of trees in urban forests, so I won't belabor that or dive into that. The research is out there and clearly talked about earlier, but the fact is we're losing trees every day, and we need to start planting more today. By losing trees and green spaces, we're losing all the benefits that make this city great and all the benefits that come with urban forests. There are really great things happening around trees in the city right now, as we've heard about. But we still need a visionary tree ordinance, which is one piece of this bigger puzzle. We need a true valuation of trees and green infrastructure. This is an infrastructure that appreciates over time, where gray infrastructure depreciates. Green infrastructure is a net asset to our city, but cities only see it as an expense on the books, and this is a real problem. We need an aggressive tree planting program that's equitable across the city and accounts for crown volume, not just canopy cover, but also accounts for attrition and maintenance. We need real enforcement of tree regulations and maintenance that holds people accountable. So I have a call to action. One is I challenge the city council, this commission, and the mayor to set the bar high with this new tree ordinance and set the standard for cities around the world. Lots of cities around the world are doing great things. Seattle can too. I challenge developers, contractors, builders, landscape planners, tree service providers to think outside the box about how to protect trees, save trees, and enhance habitat. And we also need to consolidate our urban forestry operations into one unit within the city. We need to continue to unify city efforts to protect, manage, and plant trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Woody Wheeler, Ann Throw, and Clark Coasbold.
Thank you. And I want to thank our two council members here for your leadership and advocacy. We need you. We really need that. We need people who care and people who will lead us forward. And it was nice to hear both of your remarks. So far, the best available technology for pulling carbon dioxide from the air is something called a tree. That was from Al Gore. And I would add to that, that not only does it pull the carbon dioxide out, but it puts oxygen in its place. What a beautiful piece of technology every tree is. They are sacred. We should not be pulling trees out of the ground in the so-called Emerald City in the Evergreen State. And yet we are, at an alarming rate. For 10 years or more, Seattle has been delaying implementation of a stronger tree ordinance. This is way too long. I'm going to call it foot dragging too. I think it's bureaucratic foot dragging. I think the developers love it. Then they can keep logging. Meanwhile, other cities are moving forward, like Portland, like Cambridge, like Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio is running circles around Seattle now. While the Emerald City delays, trees continue to fall, despite our city's goal of having a 30% tree canopy. We need a tree ordinance now. We need to monitor and reinforce it. I am in favor of a moratorium. We had a speaker a moment ago who has a notebook with the very trees that could be in the moratorium. He's doing the work for the city. That's wonderful. Bless him. And I've contributed more than 20 of those trees in his notebook. I want to also address something that is like the elephant in the room that no one talks about. There's this notion, I think, in Seattle that it's one or the other, trees or housing. That is a false notion, absolutely. And I would furthermore say, we had the University of Washington person say, mention air conditioning. If we're building these urban heat islands, all this concrete and steel, and putting people in those neighborhoods, and especially low-income people, are they going to be able to afford air conditioning? I think not. We're not making a sustainable or livable place for the people that we house without trees. They need trees more than any of us. So that should be part of the planning.
Thank you.
So I say move forward, and I would like to see a deadline on this so we don't go another 10 years.
Thank you. Annie Throw, Clark Keisbolt, Jessica Dixon. They might have gone. Peg Staheli. Might have somebody. Michael Foster.
Jess, you're up.
Is that Jessica Dixon?
No, sorry.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for having this meeting today. Congratulations to both of you for your new appointment. I'm with the Phinney Ridge Community Council. I'm on the board, District 6, and sort of Green Lake, Phinney neighborhood. A few weeks ago, a friend of my neighborhood called to say his neighbor's tree was being cut down. It was a majestic red cedar. It was tucked in the very back of his neighbor's yard. The tree service guy, these guys were from out of town, climbed to the top of this 100-year-old tree, and piece by piece, the tree was cut and fed into the chipper. The truck was unmarked. Later, when they had gone, we measured the trunk to be over 40 inches in diameter. My friend learned that his neighbor was planning to sell his property and that the realtor had assured him that he would not get top dollar for the property unless the tree was cut down. And so the owner might not have known that the tree was exceptional or what that meant, but the developer did and likely wanted it out of the way as quickly as possible, or the realtor, because the developer was lined up to demolish the house and build a larger house on the site. So what, no one was really aware of that day was that we had lost the environmental benefits of a tree of this size, the 550 pounds of carbon it absorbed in the past year, the over 6,000 gallons of rainwater it had intercepted during the past year, the particulates it had absorbed because it's close to Aurora, which is our polluting corridor in the north end, in the Green Lake neighborhood. And it doesn't even begin to account for the birds and wildlife that live and feed on our native trees that were displaced as this tree is cut down. So with a tree ordinance that lacks enforcement, this is typically the end of the story. Our current ordinance prohibits homeowners from cutting down an exceptional tree without a permit, but I've yet to meet anyone in my neighborhood who understands this law. And it's almost never enforced. The urban foresters at SDCI are good guys, but they're stretched too thin, so we need an ordinance that does what Greta Thunberg is calling for. To combat climate change, we must protect, restore, and fund a robust ordinance, one that protects our majestic trees and restores our urban canopy. Thank you.
Thank you. Peg Stahaley, Michael Foster.
Great. Thank you both for taking time and for giving us time to be here today. I'm Peg Staley. I'm from Southwest Seattle. I volunteered on the Seattle Pedestrian Board and also on the Seattle Urban Forestry Commission. I'm a landscape architect. So, too much time has passed. It's well more than 10 years. We're pushing on 20 years. I've been involved for that length of time. My kids are grown up and working. The city council's responsible for this. We have to have an effective tree ordinance. It has saddened me over and over. People that know me understand I am very sad that SDCI or DCLU before has been ineffective and incapable of enforcing what we do have as a tree ordinance. We need to tighten the schedule. I sat here and listened to you talk about a year, it takes time. The time has been. We need to understand that you're new, but those of us that are working here, there's a lot of gray hair in this room. Don't let this happen. We have children, don't let them get into college before you pass an ordinance. I'm not joking, I'm really sad about this. So, because it hasn't been passed and you are new, I'm asking you, put a moratorium in place. This is your responsibility. Take it on. Show us in our city, in our state, and importantly, in our country that we have leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Foster, Martin Westerman, and Michael Oxman.
Thank you. We know the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago. Declare an emergency moratorium to protect existing trees. I failed as a volunteer organizer of youth planting trees for climate justice. Kids presented to City Hall over the years, they need 1.2 trillion new trees, even as forests, towns, and nations burn, to replace the trillion we killed in 1 century, most in the last 20 years. As forests burn, urban trees become more precious. Seattle, city among the trees, I came to call home 20 years ago, stinks. It hurts my lungs biking to City Hall. Construction dust burns my eyes among steel buildings. So I thank the original people of this stolen temperate rainforest living among trees for 30,000 years on this concrete and steel spot. Duwamish understood our relations. We don't get to be here without trees. Blame whoever you want, winning a war against trees, but don't expect more of the same protections to save our trees. A moratorium on building, on remodelers, declaring trees diseased, on utilities, mangling trees, primacy for trees until you finish this ordinance. Restrict new development to the existing footprint, build up, leaving green space for full-size trees, or require owners to set aside double acreage for denser development. Rewild areas too dense now for climate justice. Dense or low-income, unsustainable developments without real trees commit new residents to shorter, unhealthier lives. Research shows $11,000 per resident living on a street with trees in healthcare benefits. People leave the hospital faster when they can see a tree outside their window.
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
I'll finish up very quickly.
We actually need to move on to the next person. Thank you for your time.
A moratorium.
Martin Westerman, Michael Oxman.
A moratorium now, as the Portland person said, on 12-inch trees.
Mr. Westerman, Mr. Oxman. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Westerman.
Well, thank you for yours, council member, and welcome to the council.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strauss, welcome. I'm with the Seattle Green Spaces Coalition. We've supported tree plant amnesty last 6,004 years. We tried to get a value statement incorporated into all legislation moving forward. That value statement would read, whereas Seattle's open and green space are tangible assets essential to public health, urban resilience, equity, and sustainability. Therefore, the City of Seattle will integrate development within this context to meet the needs of communities, neighborhoods, and the city. The council has refused to incorporate this value statement in any legislation that it has passed. So what we've got, of course, is rampant development, and it's moving the green space aside. I recall the inimitable Diane Sugimura saying, we will not let trees stand in the way of development. Hopefully, we will change that at SDCI. The Seattle Green Spaces Coalition notes that we've now got the 6th worst traffic congestion pollution in the nation, one of the 10 worst heat islands in the nation. And we support the tree ordinance, we support a moratorium, we support the City of Seattle balancing development within the context of what brings us life. Thank you.
Thank you. We just have 3 more speakers, Michael Oxman, Carrie Lafferty, and Don Cave.
Hi, friends. I'm Michael Oxman. I'm an arborist, and welcome to the City Council. Today I'm wearing my hat of the Seattle Green Spaces Coalition, although I'm not wearing their shirt. We have the same goals, and I want to talk about my job as an arborist, where I don't take care of trees. I take care of problems for tree owners. And it's my relationship with my client that's the most important thing, not the tree, unfortunately. So that has caused me over the years to have cut down trees that possibly could have been preserved, not without an effort on my part. But I just want to say that you guys are going to need a green thumb in your deliberations with the other 7 council members who aren't here right now. And so to equip you with your green thumb, I'm going to give you the 5 steps to a systematic tree inspection protocol. 1, the roots and the base of the tree is the first thing that we look at. Okay, then you look at the trunk, then you look at the branches, then you look at the twigs, and then you look at the leaves. So starting at the top, you would look at the leaves, the twigs, the branches, the trunk, and the roots. So there you go. Now that you have your green thumb, you're equipped to go out there and you can do battle with people that say that trees don't matter. However, there's a big announcement here at the end of this statement, and that is that in support of the natural capital assessment that the City Council has decided to undertake in the 2020 budget, we are doing a tree census on Earth Day. And we want the records available to you, and unfortunately, public disclosure requests of city departments have revealed that the records are unavailable.
Thank you, Mr.
So thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Lafferty and Don Cave. They might have gone. So, Mr. Cave.
Oh, I get to be last. Don Cave, Wallingford. I'm I would start with a philosophical observation that maybe despair or consolation for a legislative body that rules kind of take a back seat to attitudes. And if where we want more trees, where that's a really big priority, we'll have, or at least there'll be a way to have bigger trees and more trees. And you might say, oh, well, there's the development problem that we're talking about here that's causing our city to be depopulated of trees, and there's a desperate need for better rules, and there is. But that just shifts the priorities to the department that enforces those rules, which if they want more trees, we'll have them. But there's some question, as anyone who's been involved in these processes, as to where the balance of priorities lies once you get to that enforcing department. And the second thing is, in respect to these desperately needed rules, they unfortunately apply in the process of the development permit. And that leaves, as we heard just a couple of speakers ago, that leaves out a number of trees that get burned off because of a realtor's observation that'll help the sale. So I was thinking that it might be good to think about extending the window of inspection over the preceding couple of years before a permit's applied for, and making the developer liable for trees that were cut down prior to acquiring the property. I don't know if you can do it, but something to think about.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming out today, for sharing your time with us and your wisdom with us. And we're glad that we were able to get a wide array of presenters today from the scientific community, from the Audubon Society, from our executive department. And we'll look forward to working on a stronger tree protection ordinance. Thank you. And hearing no further business to come before this committee, we are adjourned.